The moment Yasir Dalton stepped into the ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria, every eye turned to him, though not for the reasons he'd hoped. His burgundy suit, paired with a mustard yellow tie and brown loafers, made him look like an overgrown child playing dress-up in his father's closet. As the owner of Dalton Real Estate Group, a company valued at well over $300 million, Yasir had expected his personal style to evolve naturally alongside his bank account. It hadn't. "Mr. Dalton," his assistant Miranda whispered urgently as they retreated to a quiet corner, "the Met Gala benefit is in 3 days. You cannot show up looking like this." Yasir ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration evident in his green eyes. At 34, he'd mastered the art of transforming distressed properties into luxury developments, but remained hopelessly inept at transforming himself into someone who looked the part of a real estate mogul. "I don't see what's wrong with my clothes," he muttered, though the sideways glances from other attendees told him otherwise. Miranda sighed, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling in reinforcements. My friend Gemma Fitzgerald is the best stylist in the city." She dressed Senator Wilson for his inauguration and turned that tech CEO, the awkward one with the Star Wars obsession, into GQ's Man of the Year. "A stylist," Yasir frowned. "I don't need someone picking out my clothes like I'm a child." "With all due respect, sir," Miranda replied, her tone making it clear respect was currently in short supply, "you're about to donate $1 million to the Children's Hospital at the gala. The press will be there. Investors will be there. You need to look like someone they can trust with their money, not like someone who lost a bet with a color-blind tailor." Yasir's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Fine, set it up." 2 hours later, Yasir was back in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, scrolling through Gemma Fitzgerald's professional portfolio on his tablet. Her client list was impressive actors, politicians, business leaders, all transformed from ordinary to extraordinary under her expert guidance. The doorbell rang precisely at 10 a.m. the next morning. Yasir, still in his pajamas and robe, padded across the marble floor to answer it, forgetting he had staff for such tasks. "Mr. Dalton." The woman standing in his doorway was not what he expected. In his mind, a stylist would be intimidatingly fashionable, perhaps wearing something avant-garde with an attitude to match. Instead, Gemma Fitzgerald looked accessible. Her chestnut hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore well-fitted jeans with a crisp white button-down and a navy blazer. Her only accessories were small pearl earrings and a vintage watch. But what struck him most were her eyes, warm amber with flecks of gold that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "I'm Gemma Fitzgerald. Miranda called me about an emergency styling situation." Her voice held a slight hint of amusement. Yasir cleared his throat. "Right, come in." "Though I think Miranda's being dramatic about the emergency part." Gemma stepped inside, taking in the spectacular view before turning her attention back to him. "Well, Miranda mentioned the Met Gala is in 3 days, which in styling terms is absolutely an emergency. May I?" She gestured to his closet. "Be my guest," Yasir replied, leading her through his bedroom to the walk-in closet that was larger than most Manhattan apartments. Gemma spent the next 30 minutes silently reviewing his wardrobe, occasionally making notes on her tablet. Yasir leaned against the doorframe, watching as she methodically examined each item, her expression giving nothing away. Finally, she turned to face him. "Mr. Dalton, Yasir, please." "Yasir," she amended with a small smile, "I'm going to be honest with you, we have some work to do." "That bad? Let's just say there's a disconnect between who you are and how you're presenting yourself." She stepped closer, her professional gaze assessing. "You're a successful businessman who transforms properties, sees potential where others don't, right?" He nodded, oddly pleased she knew this about him. "But your wardrobe is telling a different story. It's saying you don't pay attention to details, that you're stuck in the past, and that you're not quite comfortable in your own success." She paused. "Is any of that true?" "No," Yasir said defensively, then sighed. "Maybe the last part. I grew up in South Bronx. My dad was a superintendent. This." He gestured around the luxurious apartment. Sometimes still feels like someone else's life. Gemma's expression softened. That's actually helpful to know. The best styling doesn't just make you look good, it helps you embody who you truly are. So let's figure that out together. Over the next 2 days, Yassir found himself swept up in Gemma's world. They visited exclusive boutiques and had meetings with tailors who took more measurements than he thought possible. She brought in shoes, accessories, even suggested a slight change to his haircut that somehow made his jawline look more defined. What surprised him most was how much he enjoyed her company. Unlike many people who met him after his success, Gemma treated him like a person, not a bank account. She was knowledgeable without being condescending, confident without being arrogant, and had a quick wit that made even shopping for cufflinks entertaining. "So how did you get into this?" Yassir asked as they waited for alterations on a perfectly cut charcoal suit. Gemma smiled, sipping her coffee. "I was an art history major who needed to pay the bills. I started working retail during college and had a knack for helping people find clothes that made them feel good. One regular client recommended me to her friend, who happened to be a producer for a morning show. They needed someone to style their guests, and suddenly I had a career. You make it sound so simple." "Oh, it wasn't," she laughed. "I lived on ramen for 3 years and worked 7 days a week, but I loved it, still do." There's something magical about helping people present their best selves to the world. Yassir found himself watching her more closely after that, the way she lit up when she found exactly the right piece. How she explained color theory and fabric choices as if they were fascinating rather than tedious. The gentle way she straightened his collar or adjusted his sleeves, professional but somehow intimate. On the day of the gala, Gemma arrived at his penthouse with garment bags and a determined expression. "Today we put it all together," she announced. "Are you ready to see the new Yassir Dalton?" "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, surprised to find he was actually excited. What followed was a transformation he hadn't expected. The suit she'd selected, deep navy with the subtlest pattern, fit him like it had been painted on. The shirt was crisp white, the tie a subtle silver that brought out his eyes, and the shoes were Italian leather that felt like walking on air. But it was more than just the clothes. As Gemma worked, adding a pocket square, adjusting his cuffs, showing him how to stand to maximize the suit's lines, Yassir felt something shift inside him. For the first time, his external appearance matched how he wanted to feel: confident, successful, and worthy of his achievements. "There," Gemma said finally, stepping back to admire her work. "Take a look." Yassir turned to the full-length mirror and nearly did a double take. The man staring back at him was undeniably him, but elevated, polished, powerful. "Gemma, I don't know what to say." She stood beside him in the mirror, her own outfit for the evening, a simple but elegant black dress that highlighted her graceful neck and shoulders. "You don't need to say anything, your face says it all." Their eyes met in the reflection, and something electric passed between them. For a moment, Yassir forgot about the gala, about his business, about everything except the woman standing next to him. The moment broke when his phone buzzed with a message from his driver. "We should go," he said, his voice slightly rough. The Met Gala was everything Miranda had warned him about: photographers, celebrities, wealthy donors, all mingling beneath the museum's soaring ceilings. Normally, Yassir would have felt out of place, but tonight, with his new look and with Gemma beside him explaining the subtle social dynamics at play, he felt at ease. "Senator Wilson at your 2 o'clock, Gemma murmured. "He'll remember me. I dressed him last year. Would you like an introduction?" "Absolutely," Yassir replied, grateful for her guidance. As the evening progressed, Yassir found himself moving confidently through conversations with potential investors, charity board members, and even a famous actor whose latest film had featured one of Yassir's properties. Throughout it all, Gemma was there, sometimes by his side, sometimes watching from a distance, always a reassuring presence. When the time came for his donation to be announced, Yassir approached the podium feeling none of his usual public speaking anxiety. The crowd applauded as he presented the check, and for once he knew they were seeing him as he truly was: not just a successful businessman, but someone making a difference. Later, as the event wound down, Yasir found Gemma on the terrace, looking out at the city lights. "You were right," he said, joining her at the railing. "About what?" "About how the right clothes can change how people see you. I've never had so many meaningful conversations at an event before." Gemma smiled, but there was something wistful in it. "It's not just the clothes, Yasir, it's you. The clothes just help people see what was already there." "Well, whatever magic you worked, I'm grateful." He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to thank you properly. Dinner, perhaps, when you're not on the clock." Something flickered in her eyes, interest, definitely, but also hesitation. "That's very kind, but I make it a policy not to date clients." "Is that a firm policy or more of a guideline?" Yasir asked, grinning. She laughed, the sound warming him more than the evening breeze warranted. "It's a pretty firm policy. It keeps things professional." "I see." He nodded, respecting her boundary even as disappointment settled in his chest. "Well, if you ever decide to make an exception, you know where to find me." 2 weeks later, Yasir was closing a deal on a waterfront property he planned to develop into affordable housing when his assistant interrupted with an urgent call. "Mr. Dalton, it's Gemma Fitzgerald." Yasir's heart skipped despite his best efforts at nonchalance. "Put her through." "Yasir." Gemma's voice came through the speaker. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Nothing that can't wait. What can I do for you?" "I have a somewhat unusual request. One of my clients, an actress, is hosting a charity auction next month. They're looking for experiences to auction off, and I thought, well, I wondered if you might be willing to offer a personal tour of one of your developments, perhaps with a dinner afterward. It's for children's literacy." "I'd be happy to," Yasir replied immediately. "Send me the details and I'll have my team put something together." "Thank you," Gemma said, the relief evident in her voice. "I knew I could count on you." There was a pause and Yasir waited, sensing she had more to say. "Also," she finally continued, "I wanted to let you know I'm not styling you anymore." "Did I do something wrong?" "No, nothing like that. I'm just passing your account to my associate, Leo. He's excellent and I think you'll be pleased with his work." Yasir frowned. "I don't understand." "I thought we worked well together." Another pause. "We did. That's actually the problem." She took an audible breath. "Remember my policy about not dating clients?" "Yes." "Well, if you're not my client anymore, then maybe we could have that dinner you mentioned, if the offer still stands." Yasir grinned so widely his cheeks hurt. "The offer definitely still stands." "When are you free?" Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, far from the glitz of the Met Gala. Yasir arrived first, wearing an outfit Gemma had selected during their work together, casual but refined, a look that said successful but approachable. When Gemma walked in, he nearly forgot to breathe. She wore a simple green dress that highlighted her auburn hair, minimal jewelry, and a smile that lit up her whole face. This was Gemma as herself, not as a professional stylist, and she was even more beautiful. "You look stunning," Yasir said as she sat down. "Thank you." "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied with a teasing smile. "Though I might be biased since I picked that shirt." The evening flowed effortlessly as they moved beyond the professional boundaries that had contained their earlier interactions. Yasir learned that Gemma had grown up in Maine, the daughter of a librarian and a high school art teacher. She had a younger brother who was a marine biologist and a cat named Oscar who had one blue eye and one green. In turn, Yasir shared stories of his childhood in the Bronx, how he'd started his real estate career flipping a small apartment with money he'd saved working construction, and how his mother still insisted on cooking Sunday dinner for him despite having a personal chef at her disposal, courtesy of her son. "So why real estate?" Gemma asked as they shared a tiramisu. "With your background, you could have stayed in construction or gone into dozens of other fields." Yasir considered the question, appreciating that she was genuinely interested in his answer. "I guess I saw potential where others didn't. In the Bronx, I grew up surrounded by buildings that had good bones but bad reputations. I wanted to show people that with the right vision and investment, those places could be beautiful again." "That's remarkably similar to what I do," Gemma mused. "Looking at someone and seeing their potential, then helping bring it out." I never thought of it that way, but you're right. Yassir reached across the table, covering her hand with his. You're very good at seeing people for who they can be. The touch sent warmth coursing through both of them, and when their eyes met, the connection that had been building since their first meeting crystallized into something unmistakable. After dinner, they walked through Washington Square Park, the spring air mild and fragrant with blooming trees. Their hands found each other naturally, fingers intertwining as they talked about everything and nothing. I should probably tell you, Gemma said as they paused by the fountain, that breaking my client rule isn't something I've done before, not once in 10 years. Yassir turned to face her, still holding her hand. What made you change your mind? She looked up at him, vulnerability and determination mingling in her expression. You did, the way you listened when I talked about my work. How you treated everyone we met with respect, from the museum director to the coat check attendant. The fact that you're using your success to help others. She smiled softly, and maybe a little bit because of how you looked at me when you didn't think I noticed. And how was that? He asked, his voice low. Like I was the most interesting person in the room, not just a service provider but someone worth knowing. Yassir stepped closer. You are the most interesting person in any room, Gemma Fitzgerald. When he kissed her, gently at first and then with growing certainty, the distant sound of the fountain and the city beyond faded away. There was only this moment, this woman, and the unexpected connection that had blindsided them both. Over the following months, their relationship deepened as they discovered the joy of being together outside of their professional roles. Yassir found himself opening up to Gemma in ways he never had with anyone else, sharing not just his successes but his fears and doubts. In turn, she showed him parts of herself she usually kept hidden from clients: her passion for photography, her sometimes riotous sense of humor, and her fierce loyalty to those she cared about. They weathered challenges together, too. Yassir's schedule was demanding, with developments in multiple cities requiring his attention. Gemma's work had her dressing clients for events around the country. But they made it work, setting aside dedicated time for each other and learning to communicate honestly about their needs and expectations. 6 months into their relationship, Yassir invited Gemma to join him for the opening of his latest project, a mixed-use development in Brooklyn that included affordable housing, a community center, and spaces for local businesses. As they stood on the rooftop garden overlooking the city, Yassir watched Gemma chatting animatedly with a young family who had just received keys to their new apartment. She had helped the mother find professional attire for job interviews, going far beyond what Yassir had asked when he'd mentioned the woman's situation. You know, he said when Gemma rejoined him at the railing, I think I might be in love with you. Her smile was radiant as she took his hand. That's convenient because I know I'm in love with you. Even though I still occasionally pick out the wrong tie, especially because of that, she laughed. Gives me something to do. Their relationship continued to flourish, each bringing out the best in the other. Gemma's influence extended beyond Yassir's wardrobe to his company's philanthropic initiatives, helping him develop programs that provided professional styling and attire to job seekers from disadvantaged backgrounds. Meanwhile, Yassir's belief in Gemma's talent encouraged her to expand her business, opening a styling studio that catered to clients of all income levels, not just the wealthy and famous. A year after their first date, they were back at the Met Gala, this time attending together openly as a couple. Yassir wore a custom tuxedo that Gemma had helped design, and she wore a gown that complemented his look perfectly. Remember last year? Yassir murmured as they ascended the famous steps, cameras flashing around them. I was so nervous. And now look at you, Gemma replied proudly. You're the one giving fashion advice to that tech CEO over there. Only because I have an excellent teacher, he squeezed her hand. Actually, I've been thinking about taking another lesson from you. Oh, what's that? You're always talking about how the right accessories can elevate an outfit. Yassir guided her to a quiet alcove away from the crowd, then reached into his pocket. I was wondering if this particular accessory might elevate our relationship. The ring he held was exquisite, a cushion-cut diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light and refracted it in rainbow patterns across Gemma's stunned face. "Yassir," she breathed. "Gemma Fitzgerald, you walked into my life to dress me for an event, but you ended up transforming so much more than my wardrobe. You showed me how to truly see myself, and in doing so, you helped me become the man I always wanted to be." He took a deep breath. "I love you more than I thought possible, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Tears glistened in Gemma's eyes as she nodded, words momentarily beyond her. When she found her voice again, it was thick with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As he slid the ring onto her finger, then drew her into his arms for a kiss that promised forever, Yassir marveled at how his life had changed. He had hired a stylist expecting a business transaction, never imagining he would find the love of his life. Their wedding the following spring was an intimate affair held in the rooftop garden of Yassir's Brooklyn development. Gemma wore a gown of her own design, simple and elegant, while Yassir wore a suit that perfectly complemented her, a visual representation of how perfectly they fit together. As they exchanged vows under an arbor of blooming wisteria, surrounded by family and close friends, Yassir looked into Gemma's eyes and saw his future reflected there, one filled with love, partnership, and the joy of continuing to grow together. "I never thought I'd be grateful for that horrible burgundy suit," he whispered as they shared their first dance as husband and wife. Gemma laughed, the sound that had first captured his heart still making him smile a year later. "I knew the moment I saw it that you were either color blind or in desperate need of help. I just never expected that helping you would lead to this." "To us," Yassir corrected, pulling her closer. "To us," she agreed, resting her head against his chest. "The best-dressed power couple in New York." 2 years after their wedding, Yassir and Gemma welcomed twins, a boy and a girl, who quickly became the center of their world. Their penthouse, once a showcase of modern design, was now happily cluttered with baby toys and family photos. Gemma had scaled back her client list to focus on her styling studio and their children, while Yassir had restructured his company to allow him more time at home. They were partners in every sense, in business, in parenthood, and in the ongoing adventure of building a life together. On the 5th anniversary of the day they met, they returned to the Waldorf Astoria for a rare night away from the kids. As they sipped champagne in the same ballroom where Yassir had once stood in that ill-fated burgundy suit, they reflected on the journey that had brought them together. "If you could go back," Gemma asked, "would you change anything? Maybe pick out a better suit so you never needed to call me?" Yassir considered the question, then shook his head. "Not a chance. That terrible outfit was the best fashion decision I ever made." He raised his glass to hers. "Here's to bad suits and the beautiful beginnings they sometimes lead to. And to seeing the potential in unexpected places," Gemma added, her eyes shining with love. As they clinked glasses, both knew with absolute certainty that the best styling Gemma had ever done wasn't about clothes at all. It was about helping two hearts find their perfect match. A transformation far more meaningful than any wardrobe could ever be.